When society tries to make sense of its most notorious killers, or even just a highly toxic boss, we tend to reach for two specific words: sociopath, psychopath. We project these labels onto figures like Ted Bundy to explain behavior that seems entirely detached from human empathy. Pop culture has drawn a neat, recognizable line between the two. The common wisdom tells us that sociopaths are erratic, impulsive, and made by a traumatic environment, while psychopaths are the cold, calculating manipulators who were simply born that way. But if you sit down with a clinical psychiatrist today and ask them to officially diagnose a patient as a sociopath or a psychopath, they will tell you they can't do it. Neither of those terms actually exists as a primary diagnosis in the DSM-5, the authoritative manual of mental disorders. Relying on these culturally saturated ghost terms creates a massive blind spot. It obscures how clinical psychology actually measures, tracks, and categorizes dangerous behavior in the real world. Take the term sociopath. The psychiatric community retired it decades ago after the 1952 publication of the very first DSM. Today, it lacks any precise clinical definition. Instead, modern psychiatry uses a different official diagnosis: antisocial personality disorder, or ASPD. The criteria for diagnosing ASPD rely almost entirely on an observable behavioral footprint. They look for rule-breaking, patterns of deceit, and reckless impulsivity, often stretching back to childhood. It is a measurement of action. The diagnosis catalogs exactly what a person does, rather than attempting to assess their internal emotional state or their capacity for remorse. Because it focuses strictly on external actions, ASPD functions as an incredibly wide diagnostic net. It captures a massive variety of troubled, impulsive, and chronically rule-breaking individuals under one single label. While ASPD accurately tracks a person's outward rap sheet, it completely misses the internal, cold emotional void that society fears when we picture a monster. That specific emotional void is where psychopathy comes in. While it isn't a primary DSM diagnosis, psychopathy is a highly specific, thoroughly researched clinical concept. Psychologists measure this construct using specialized formal tools, most notably Robert Hare's psychopathy checklist. Unlike ASPD's focus on outward behavior, this checklist probes a patient's internal emotional architecture. It tests for a hollow core, devoid of empathy and guilt, which is often masked by superficial charm and grandiosity. A large circle represents ASPD. A smaller circle represents psychopathy. Look at the overlap. Most with ASPD are not psychopathies. In maximum security prisons, only a third meet the criteria. In the general population, it's 1%. When we conflate a broad behavior-based disorder with a rare and profound emotional deficit, we paint a scientifically inaccurate picture of human nature. This confusion has consequences that reach beyond medical pedantry. The stakes become a matter of life or death when these terms enter the justice system. Courts and juries routinely merge ASPD and psychopathy together. When a defendant is presented with an ASPD diagnosis, juries frequently assume they are dealing with an incurable, remorseless monster. This pattern was starkly visible in capital cases like the Supreme Court case Barefoot v. Estelle. In that trial, prosecuting psychiatrists diagnosed the defendant as a severe criminal sociopath to confidently predict he would commit future acts of violence. The American Psychiatric Association actually intervened, explicitly warning the Supreme Court about this practice. They presented research showing that long-term psychiatric predictions of violent behavior are highly unreliable, proving wrong in at least 2 out of every 3 cases. The APA argued that taking statistical behavioral data and dressing it up with clinical-sounding labels provides juries with a false aura of medical certainty, which is then used to justify the harshest possible sentences. The ultimate danger here is clear: using a broad history of bad behavior to legally condemn someone's internal emotional architecture distorts both scientific integrity and the legal process. Knowing the exact difference between these diagnoses is our best defense against condemning individuals based on the myths of pop culture rather than the facts of science.